Hi, everyone. I'm Justin K. Hughes, licensed professional counselor, and I'm so excited today to have a guest interview with my close friend, colleague, Dr. Ted Witzig Jr., who is both a pastor and a psychologist. He specializes in OCD and anxiety disorders, along with some other specialties. I want to hear more about that as well. But he has a special heart for both the Lord and also people who suffer, and just has some really fabulous insights on particularly OCD. And we're going to talk about that here today and also get to know him as well. Ted, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Justin. It is great to be with you and with your listeners.
All right. Well, so what's your story, Ted? Tell me more about your background, your unique role as a pastor and psychologist, and all of that.
So grew up in Central Illinois, where I still live. Grew up in a minister's home. So I was a PK, a preacher's kid, and that was the Christian church was our our life. It was a ministering to people, being part of a church community, and knowing the Lord, serving the Lord was that. So as I went through high school, I thought I was going to be a physician. That's what I was planning to be. And then the senior year of high school, I had a good friend take his life. And it spun my world around, and it really made me say, what the suffering, what causes this, and what can be done? And it pivoted me. And so I shifted over to psychology, got a master's degree and eventually a doctorate. And along the way had, as I had learning more about depression, anxiety, these kind of things. Good friend of mine had some OCD, some other people and in my life. And then what I saw as I started to work with Christian people was how much perfectionism, and I called it perfectionism at the time. There's certainly Christians that can have Christian clients that can have perfectionism, but I saw them really struggling with perfectionism. And I didn't realize at the time, this was back like 1996, 97, right in there, that OCD could show up in ways that weren't just washing hands and checking locks. And then when I found out that OCD could come in the form of intrusive thoughts, and then it could wrap itself around religious and moral matters called scrupulosity, all of a sudden a light bulb went on that this perfectionism, sometimes it is just perfectionism inside of depression or whatever, but some of this perfectionism was not just it was also the OCD and the religious scrupulosity. And about that time, when I graduated with my PhD in clinical psychology in 2004, and in that time I was brought into the lay ministry of our church. So since 2004, I've been in that, both in the lay ministry of the church as well as a psychologist. And then in 2020, I was ordained in the pastorate, became our senior pastor and elder. And so for the last number of years, so it's been the walk of my clinical work and my OCD work, and the faith component has just always intermixed. And I would just say that it has, because I have seen such suffering among people who want so badly to be close to God and so badly to do well in their life. And OCD is just undoing them. And then, of course, when you're trying that hard and feeling the failure, or like you can't just measure up, or all these different things, these individuals oftentimes show up in the pastor's office because they're having a spiritual problem, or they show up in the counselor's office because they're depressed. And so one of the things I found that people were coming from different places, sometimes from the pediatrician or their physician's office because they're depressed, or sometimes from the pastor's office. And I tell you what, just so being is in the church that I'm a part of, we're bivocational, meaning we have a job as well as we serve in the ministry. And I would say that as a clinician, I feel like I have this dual role. Also, it is a dual role, where I am serving people and serving as kind of translator, if you will, translator between the Christian community and the mental health community and back and forth. And I think you do a lot of that as well. And it's why I'm so glad that we've been able to partner, and that you're doing what you're doing, and others of our colleagues that really can speak into this space and help people to see that there is not only healing from OCD, but that their faith doesn't have to be put on the shelf, or ignored or wounded even further, but that it can actually be grown through this process.
That's great. What are some of the reasons, Ted, that you see where that gets mixed up? So why folks may assume that it has to be a faith problem or a faith issue, or maybe on the other side, just assume it has to be perfectionism out of depression or anxiety. What are thoughts there?
So first of all, OCD by its nature wraps itself around somebody's context and around their world. And so the content of the obsessions, the content that the person is actually worried about, is actually the content that they care about in their life. And so one of the things that happens is, we have people going to their pastors to confess. Okay. And confession, when somebody sins, it makes sense. That's a, 1 John 1:9, confess our sins, was faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Well, that's great. But without OCD, that practice is a good spiritual practice that brings us additional freedom and light and closeness. In OCD, somebody goes to confess whether they needed to or not, and then they go, did I do it enough, or did I say it? Did I do it with the right tone? Did I leave out this detail? And all of a sudden, now I need to confess again, and now I need to confess again. And here's the key. That confession, which is, we would say in OCD, becomes a compulsion. It feels good for a little bit, right? So, I mean, that they're going to feel relief right after. Okay, I did it again. And so the OCD doing the compulsion has a bit of relief, and it reinforces itself. And then the person that's trying to help them, okay, they've unburdened themselves. They're leaving relieved. That's great. And so the misunderstanding, for example, that talking about whether somebody's committed the unpardonable sin, or am I proud or not, these kind of the themes or the topics sound on the surface spiritual, and they may have some spiritual pieces, because the pastor this past Sunday may have talked about the importance of dealing with pride, or what is modesty, or do we love God with our whole heart?
Whole hearts,
right?
Yeah,
Right?
surrender,
all on the altar. I mean, all those things, and then the other thing that happens is, when we talk about our spiritual experience, we use phrases like this. Isn't it so wonderful to have peace with God? Well, it is wonderful to have peace with God. But when you have OCD and you start going, do I have peace with God? Wait a minute, did I feel a twinge right there? Oh no. All of a sudden, that thing that no pastor is up there going, hey, you know what? When I preach even myself, when I'm up there preaching, I am not trying to make the people with OCD, examine the minutia of their life that spins them out for a week, but something like that can, and so you asked about the flip side also. In the secular world, sometimes, and even, I shouldn't just say the secular world, but because sometimes it's even in Christian communities and other places, but sometimes OCD is just not known. And so somebody goes and they have a religious concern. Well, it's either, okay, this person, oh, they have a problem with their church, or they just need to get away from church, or oh, it's a spiritual thing. Well, that's clearly a mental illness kind of thing, like that having a spiritual concern means something that's wacky. And again, what we want to do is we want to take mental health concerns seriously. We want to deal with them well, and they manifest in different ways. And that's why good diagnosis and treatment plan is so important, right? We don't want to treat everything as the same thing. We want to make sure that each person is treated as an individual. But when you don't understand that OCD can show up through a fear of not allowing yourself to participate in communion, or someone's to be baptized, or something like that. Oh no, what if I'm not good enough? Oh no, and then rehashing, what I think in third grade, I might've cut in front of Bobby Smith. Maybe I need to find Bobby Smith and call him and apologize for what I did in third grade before I can do this. For us, we go, OCD. Okay. That's what you and I are thinking. For them, they're going, I have to confess this or else I am not right with God. And that could be a big deal.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it was striking to me in my career, kind of midway through my career, when I was coming across folks with OCD. And I say that what drew me into the work was the people first and foremost, and then also the effectiveness of the treatments.
Yeah.
But I was finding folks that they were the most conscientious about their faith, and they were most worried about it being a faith problem. And
for sure.
One of the reasons that I created the course was for step-by-step details and rationale around why it's a distraction. It's a hasty judgment. What I've seen by almost 10 years of specialized experience in OCD, almost 20 years in counseling. And then for you, how many years for you have you been at it?
Yeah. So I got into the field in 1997. That's when I started. And so I didn't really understand it all that well either. But I think one of the things is, over time, what you see is you get when working with someone like yourself or another practitioner who knows OCD well, you can see it, and where it looks invisible, or to other people. They'll see the distress or see the conscientiousness, and accidentally sometimes that conscientiousness is rewarded, like, oh wow, you know what? Yeah, my son, he's boy, I don't know, he's really into prayer. He's really into prayer. He's got to pray 90 minutes before he goes to school, or else, and you're like, and it sounds like more of everything has got to be better.
Yeah.
Okay. More. And OCD, unfortunately, isn't saying more out of a place of this is just this beautiful feeling or act of worship. It is the oh no, what if, and if I don't, and I must get that internal click, or I must get it right, or did I say it right? And if I didn't, I need to back up and start it again. And all those things are both painful, but also they may appear to be devotion or conscientiousness, but they're really very, very painful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so going back, I realized as I was sharing the number of years, I wasn't meaning to highlight that as, some great thing, or to put it on that wall of pride, but specifically that I've had enough time now to see again and again that I think actually, in all honesty, the strongest examples of faith I've ever seen have been in people that I know who have OCD. And I'm curious what your thought is on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that oftentimes our clients will come feeling like spiritual failures.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that doing this work, as you and I would both say, that this is an act of faith to do the treatment.
Yes.
And that through doing the treatment, there is a wonderful coming together of walking with their faith, and walking toward the Lord, following Jesus, following their beliefs. And I think one of the things is, it is a tremendous testimony. It is a tremendous act of faith. They will oftentimes feel like it's a pittance, it is not much. But the whole thing is, oftentimes, because they've been measuring it differently than you and I would measure it, or I think the Lord would measure it. So here's the thing. If somebody feels like they have to measure the strength of their faith because they feel certain, okay, all right, and oftentimes that's what OCD accidentally, well, OCD does it on purpose, but you'll hear me personify OCD this way, but OCD does it on purpose to say faith equals feeling certain, okay? And that there's something about that feels right. It's like, I have strong faith when I feel certain. The problem is that OCD, A, that's not a good definition of faith, but B, OCD will take advantage of that greatly. Because here's the thing that OCD wants to do. It wants you to give you uncertainty, and then it wants to say uncertainty equals doubt, which equals danger. And so every time I feel uncertainty, it equals that I'm in spiritual danger.
Yeah.
And it's popping. And so I have to do something to reduce that spiritual danger. And what you and I, and you'll say it in your own way, and I'll just, which is great. We all come at it a little differently.
Yours is better.
Nah, I don't think so. I just think that what happens is that faith, or excuse me, I'll back up and I'll say uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it gives us an opportunity to practice walking faith. Okay. And so the thing about it is, our life, whether we're dealing with OCD or not OCD, no matter how much we think about it, no matter how much planning we do or things of that nature, we're always going to have these steps of faith. We're always going to have to, we're going to come to the end of ourselves that we have to take steps of faith. And when we normalize that and say, wait a minute, the scripture even tells us we walk by faith, not by sight.
That's right.
And that we have to take that taking those steps toward Jesus instead of the step toward this, I have to have absolute certainty. And I think that's the thing. And I know that it doesn't make it easy, but I think it's a nice frame of reference to say that you know what, that walking, following the step of our master, our savior, Jesus, that's, I can do that with uncertainty. And
it doesn't make it easy, but it
doesn't make it easy, but
good frame of reference.
But he's good. But he is good.
He is good. I wonder if you'd comment. I think this connects on the 7 shifts, and I can go ahead and share that here. I only discovered this very, very recently. I didn't realize that this was a presentation that you had given. Hopefully folks can see that, and I'll make sure that there's a more direct link with a bigger image. But tell me about the 7 shifts, because some of this is baked into the language you're using here. Yeah.
So as I was thinking about treating religious scrupulosity, particularly among Christian people, but it applies broadly, I was thinking about the shifts that I needed to help people when they come into treatment, and what they need to do and where we need to go, kind of in a big picture sense, if I could boil it down. And so that's where I came up with 7 shifts, and you could come up with more or less, but I think this is the thing that I like to do, is think of it in this way, that we move from, like, the first one is faith is what I feel, and that's OCD loves to go really say your spiritual life is what you feel viscerally in your chest and abdomen. And if you feel peace here, okay, then you're good. But if you feel some kind of ick here, something is deeply wrong. And what happens is then they really work to try to get that internal click, that just right, all that stuff. We have to pivot to seeing that it's not about trying to feel my faith. It's having walking faith and living my beliefs, living into my beliefs. And so what happens is that I can, if I'm worried, for example, about, am I going to do the right thing or to say the right thing or whatever, I can stay home from going to church or a service gathering or something like that to analyze, more and more and just do analysis. Or I can say, I feel uncertain, but you know what? I need to do walking faith, and I need to go, to the Boys and Girls Club or, and play basketball with the kids, even though I feel ick right now. And it's okay, because that's walking faith. It's moving away from, I know that I'm okay because of my feelings. I love feelings. There's nothing wrong with feelings,
I do
but
too.
one thing we want to do is we want to remember that that feelings are not our direct indicator of our relationship with God. The next one is taking medication may mask a spiritual problem. Many of our clients, they worry that anything up front could mask a problem. And so I don't fight with my clients about medication. But I would say this, that sometimes that what ends up happening is where it would be helpful, and it can definitely be helpful for a number of our clients. And I think if we can see it as it may be one way that God helps me overcome my OCD, then we can go back and thank God for it. It's one of the tools in the toolbox. I think what happens is I hear my clients talk about it, that it's like, oh, if I do this treatment or if I take this medication, it might mask a spiritual problem. It's kind of like that they think that somehow that an almighty, powerful God is somehow crippled by a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and it's like, no, he that God is not hindered by that. And in fact, I just say it this way, that sometimes our clients forget that we are biological, psychological, social, and spiritual beings, all four of those things. Okay. And we can sometimes give lip service to that, but we live in a real body. We live in a real body that has real neurochemicals and real things.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that stands out to me there is we can lean on a lot of church history and things that we've already grappled with to call that out. Some of the early church heresies were these beliefs that, well, we're really just this floating spirit and the body doesn't really matter. But Christ came incarnated in human form. And I think that in and of itself just highlights that God cares about the body as well as the mind and the soul.
It really does. It really does. And I think that's where when you and I work with people and we're able to look at somebody and see them in all these different spheres, instead of this either or, like a lot of times our clients with OCD or other conditions will be saying, well, is this spiritual or is this physical? Kind of like where there's an or in some of these things, or is it psychological, or is it? And it's physical and it's psychological and it's social and it's spiritual. And God made us as this whole. We are a being in this wholeness. And so that I think is a really important aspect of being able to see that. And I think one of the other things that I would say to Christian clients related to the medication piece is, if somebody comes to me for their OCD and they're making progress and we're reaching their goals, like I said, I don't fight with them about but if they're not able to do the treatment, if secondary problems are showing up, like they're not able to work or other things, I'm going to bring it around again, because I'm looking at it saying, I want to use our full toolbox we have to get you to where you need to go. And I think that there's unnecessary self-shaming that happens amongst Christian people, because it goes like this: if I was a good enough Christian, if I was strong enough, I wouldn't need this kind of help and strength, to help me through. And I just think we gotta be able to allow ourselves to work through those things.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. And for those that are very, very new to all things OCD and treatments, OCD is a disorder in two parts: intrusive, unwanted thoughts, urges, images. I mean, I extend that. I'm not the person writing the diagnosis, but I extend that to any unwanted internal stimuli. So,
Oh yeah.
a feeling, an emotion, sensation,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But then secondarily, it's these compulsive ritualistic attempts to get relief from the distress of that intrusion. And it has to be
Yeah.
time consuming. There's the disorder side, time consuming at some level. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
impairing at some level. And we know that 2 out of 3 individuals experience disability and significant impairment. It's one of the top disabling conditions in the world. And so, as far as treatments, there really are a couple of go-to in the medical on the medical side of things. It is the SSRI medications. There's one SRI for those who want to get technical, and then there are other different medications that can be used, but that's
Mm-hmm.
typically the first line of defense there. But on average, the benefits of the medication here are quite a bit less than the on average of therapy, which the
Mm-hmm.
gold standard is in. It's a subset of cognitive behavioral therapy that
Mm-hmm.
involves exposure and response prevention. Any particular comments about the treatments, gold standard? And there are other treatments, even in the therapy, and sometimes, especially with ACT, which I know that you practice. I
Mm-hmm.
utilize ACT as well. Curious if you just comment on treatments, Christians doing treatment. Any thoughts that you have there?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one is that we know better how to treat OCD we know better how to treat OCD today than at any other time in history.
Yeah,
And there are more options and ways to come at this than
yeah,
ever. So that's a
yeah,
wonderful thing.
yeah.
I think the other thing is that many times when people hear about the treatments, or they hear about needing to do some of the tools that we use, like exposure and response
Hmm.
prevention,
Hmm.
they can sometimes, kind of wonder, does this fit? Can
Hmm.
I do this as a Christian? Is this
Yeah,
going to hurt my faith and things
yeah.
like that? And I would
Mhm.
say you and I are living this out, that absolutely there is good treatment, and this
Yeah.
treatment,
Yep.
the cognitive behavior therapy with exposure and response prevention, acceptance commitment therapy, other pieces can
Mhm.
be used in ways that actually, A, don't hurt your faith, B, are very clinically effective, and C, that when we do that, the outcome can actually not only get us to the symptom reduction we want, but can get people back into their lives in a very
Mhm.
meaningful way.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's OCD isn't a respecter of persons or class or any kind of person, but it does
Mhm.
show up
Mhm.
in mild, moderate, and severe forms, and so
Mhm.
it can look very different in different people, and so sometimes we can just use this tool here, and sometimes we've got to use the whole cluster of tools,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
that's why we have a toolbox, and then why we also can work with an individual person, figuring out what is best for
Mm.
them in their case.
And on the individual person side, I think of the people, the person, and that's what drew me into the work. And at any point, if I'm successful with something, especially that's particularly challenging, I think I can usually go back to slowing it down enough to get with the person. And even in possible alternative options for treatment, it's interesting. I'll tell folks sometimes I'm more open and more closed towards the options
Mm.
that exist. So
Hmm.
more open in the sense that I know that not one approach, one person, one thing always works for everyone.
Hmm.
But also more convicted as far as a lot of times what to first try, or
Sure.
many of the
Yep.
basic essentials. And
Yep.
especially as somebody who uses ACT quite a bit, can you talk about how sometimes going that route, and maybe if you sometimes do it exclusively without exposure and response prevention. How do some of the alternatives help or complement or facilitate at times, and why is that sometimes needed?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think that regardless of the method, two things are going to have to be true. One
Mm,
is somebody is going to have to um, not be as reactive or follow what that obsessional thought, image, or impulse, and they get hooked by it. And then they're also going to have to not do the compulsion. Okay, so these things here are key things across whatever form of treatment we're gonna use. OCD's goal is to get us hooked by the obsession, and then therefore think that the
mhm, mhm.
compulsion will be the solution.
Yeah.
And so at regardless of the method, we're going to have to unhook from one and not do another.
Mm,
And that's
mhm.
and I think the key part there is that for Christian people, what I find is particularly because of New Testament scriptures that talk about thoughts, okay, taking every thought captive and bringing it to the obedience of Christ,
Christ,
and
yeah.
and and and
Mhm,
and such like. Again, I think it's a beautiful scripture. I believe the
mhm,
scripture, but
mhm,
but
mhm.
when it's applied incorrectly to intrusive thoughts, then it accidentally would lead
Mhm.
somebody to a conclusion that's going to move them in the wrong direction
Mm.
with the OCD.
And I see that a lot of times folks will come in with what sometimes is referred to as proof texting. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, give you a future. Proof texting would
Yeah,
be taking, one verse very much out
yeah,
of context
yeah,
and saying, okay, great. Well, so that means, let's see, to be prosperous today means that I wouldn't feel anxiety or
yeah, yeah.
whatever. And actually, if we look at that passage, it's a brutal passage. There's a lot of suffering,
Yeah.
but also a lot of hope.
Mhm.
Uh, just like Book of Job, et cetera, et cetera. I'm really curious, and this is could be a lot of additional time, but what do you see as far as some of those larger themes where, be it church as a whole, maybe even American U.S. Christianity, sometimes really, really contributes to some of those dynamics of
Yes.
a person seeking certainty or maybe proof texting or curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think that several things. Again, I think that in it we're experiencing um, life through this biopsychosocial spiritual sense. So we have a social group that we're around with in churches and things like that, and we have teaching. One of the things that happens is an over reliance on feelings and experience.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
and again,
Hmm.
I yes, it is our feelings are part of our religious experience, and
Yeah. That's right.
from lament to worship and joy, we're going to experience feelings. So
That's
I'm
right.
not anti feelings here, but when feelings are elevated or used as the marker
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of of all things spiritual, then it
Mm-hmm.
takes on an overly large place in life. Another one
Mm-hmm.
is so there's experience over here, but then also over on the teaching side
Hmm.
and doctrine side, I think understanding doctrine, understanding why we believe and all those things is helpful, and it's good to study. But what happens is over here it really pushes on certainty. You have to
Mm-hmm.
know, and this position says this, and I have to, and you can say it, and I know it, and this teacher believes it super strong in this way, and this teacher believes it super strong in this way. At the end of the day, at the
Hmm.
end of the day, I think we have to come to a place where we say, Lord, thou knowest. Lord,
Lord, thou
you
knowest.
know, and that I would actually say that maturity as a believer isn't having certainty in every little detail that I
Hmm.
could.
Hmm.
It's actually being able to come and arrive at a place where I can say, you know, this
Hmm.
is, I can put this question on my mental code hook and let it be, and
Yeah.
just say,
Yes.
God, you're God, and somehow those things work together, and I'm grateful because you're my God. So
Yeah.
these two
Mm.
things, pushing experience on one hand, and then
Mm.
pushing certainty in understanding to a
Mm.
degree
Yeah.
that becomes unhelpful. And again, I'm not
Yeah.
telling people not to study their Bibles or they shouldn't or they can't have a
Mhm.
position, but
Obviously,
but
as the bivocational pastor, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm. Yeah, and I find that to me, as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, I don't know. It's clearly older. Like I'm just losing here. The the power of connection with others, but also story and just
mhm,
another person knowing that you love Jesus, Ted,
mhm,
or seeing that and seeing that you can pastor and also be a psychologist. I think it's so powerful.
mm,
And I heard Malcolm Gladwell the other day talking about how he's shifted in his writing to
mm,
really sometimes hits on evidence and a big bullet points here, but the power of story, which we see
mm.
Jesus, of course, doing that as well.
Yep.
And I see that as such a big thing. And even just doing this here today, more people to really see that there's hope and
Mhm.
um, on the rational side of things, there can always be skepticism towards something. And I could be wrong about medication. I could be wrong about therapy. Could be wrong, right? Right?
Mm.
The
Sure.
uncertainty of things. But when we actually get into the experience and we spend time with people and we pray and we say, Lord, thou knowest.
Mhm,
And also I think of
mhm,
Mary and her response to the news that Mary, the mother of Jesus, would carry the Messiah.
yeah,
Um, May it be unto me as you said, just that faith. And so my
mm,
hope is that people can really gain hope and see that there is hope,
yeah,
and that it's not through any one of us per se or necessarily any one therapy method. I am a huge believer. I'm going to fight all day long for the current gold
yeah,
standard and what
sure.
that is. But at the end of the day, that our hope is ultimately in Jesus. And then, second of all, that there are treatments. It's okay. Like Christians, uh, theoretically, a person might have some conviction that maybe it's not okay for them to take a medication, but to really, really see through the examples of others that
Yep.
it's not per se a faith issue. We all have faith
Yeah,
issues, but it's not per
yep.
se a faith issue. And there's hope and there's treatments. It looks different from person to person,
Oh,
and
for
that's
sure.
also okay. That's
That's
also okay.
very much. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I'm curious, I know coming up on time, want to be able to wrap with um, any closing thoughts, but particularly uh, insights, Ted, as far as things that you see uh, uh, opportunities for, just really on that positive sense. What are the opportunities right now for us, especially as Christians and in the church? What are those opportunities that you see at this juncture? And open it up, of course, to anything, but especially in the context of OCD, mental health. Like,
Yep.
what opportunities do we have today, wrapping up, getting towards the end of 2024?
Yeah. So, first of all, there are wonderful opportunities for the Christian church and for Christian people because, first and foremost, in the world as we face it today, there's plenty of stresses, anxieties, and unknowns, and so we have to practice this. Whether we have OCD or not, we have to walk forward with faith and things like that. But I think that one of the things that we can do is that we really have the opportunity to come alongside one another.
Mhm.
And I think that one of the greatest opportunities for Christian people is that when they're going through, whether they're in counseling or thinking about counseling, that they don't have to see themselves as like, okay, I have a church community and over here, but now I failed at being a Christian, or I failed at church, so I have to go see the counselor.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
but to really see their mental health as part of their overall health, which is part of their overall life.
Yeah.
And I love it when friends and mentors and family members are walking with somebody and
Mm.
that somebody has allowed them to be a part of their treatment. I think that even whether they're going through a course like yours, whether they're going through a workbook or treatment or whatever, that when they go with a small anchor group, or even just another person, but I call it an anchor group. I just like this small group that they can be honest about what's going on. That somebody can help with pacing, or if they, making sure they get their homework done or whatever, and it's obviously our client's responsibility to do their treatment. But I think that shame is a powerful factor. And when we can break that through acceptance and understanding, I think the other thing is, oftentimes, because OCD is wrapped around our thoughts and our feelings, having another person to bounce ideas off of, not as reassurance. And that's why I like those people to be along on the journey, so that it's not just a reassurance thing, but in fact that they can help in the person, because we have to help them not just reduce their symptoms. We have to help people live into their lives. And so part of that is living and practicing the spiritual disciplines and being part of their lives. And they can do that. That's part of treatment. I think another thing is that we really have to understand that OCD likes to really play havoc with somebody's God image, their picture of God, their understanding of him, how they picture him. And OCD will make God into some kind of accountant that is just the cruelty aspect a lot of times. And yes, I fully believe that God is holy and wonderful and righteous and all those things. And he is perfectly gracious and merciful and kind. And he does that perfectly. And that's exhibited perfectly in Jesus. And so I think the thing is, we just have to remember that along the way, the church family and the family can really come around somebody, because just reducing symptoms doesn't equal somebody having a healthy God image, or being able to now live into their spiritual life.
That's right.
I want to reduce those symptoms. Don't get me wrong. We're after symptom reduction.
Yes.
Okay. But I think that this is where we have the opportunity to then.
That's great. The now what and unto what.
Yeah. And that's part of relapse prevention, because the healthier we're that, and when we have people, relapse prevention becomes such an important part of that.
Yeah.
Ted,
thank you so much. I can always spend hours upon hours, and I get to typically every year spend a little bit more time. But back to the alongside example, you've just done that to me. You quickly took me under your wing, like not even in any formal sense, but within first getting to know you in that first year, coming away from I think it was in Austin where we really met and talked to each other, 2019, I believe, and not just watching your presentations, you came alongside me, showed me the love of Christ, and it's just been a really special friendship. So thank you, Ted. Thanks for being here.
And I would just say, it has been a privilege to walk alongside you and to encourage you in your practice, the way you minister, because to be able to have other resources, be other practitioners, it warms my heart to see these things happening, because it means that more people are going to be touched and reached. And
that's right.
And to God be the glory in all of that.
Yeah, to God be the glory. That's right. Yeah, that almost reflects like Paul's heart for Timothy, I think. Well, in wrapping up, I'm going to just play a little video intro to my online course. It's called Christians Overcome Your OCD, launching October 25th here, at least the recording of this about a week out. And no one person, no one course is the salvation for anyone, but its goal is to encourage people that there's hope, that they can get effective treatment and also grow closer to Christ simultaneously. So thank you so much again, Ted, for being here today.
My privilege.
OCD is isolating, debilitating. It's one of the most debilitating illnesses on the face of this planet. And it can feel even more alone as a Christian to suffer with it if there's an expectation of needing to just have more faith or pray more, or somehow this wouldn't be a problem if I just trusted in God more. Well, I want to encourage you, it's not a weakness of faith. It's not a specific faith issue. However, people who grow deeper and mature more find that oftentimes their faith is at the center of it. I've worked with hundreds of cases at this point of OCD and talked to even more people about their experience, ranging from Pastor William, who suffered with scrupulous obsessions of whether or not he was saved, to Susan, who was an attorney, now a stay-at-home mom, who had obsessions of what if she harmed her kids accidentally. She didn't want that, but she had these intrusions, and many, many more. And I think the most important thing for you to know up front is that there's hope and there are steps forward. And that's exactly what I want to show you. I want to show you how. I want to get into the logistics. This course helps people walk the road of understanding how do I find freedom in OCD, and also while walking faith congruently with Christ.